You are cordially invited to return to a time when greed was good, evil was not pretty, and survival was an adventure. From Charles Dickens' thrilling classic.
My name is Nicholas Nickleby.
Welcome back to another episode of We Don't Know What to Watch, the podcast where two guys watch a random movie on a streaming service because we have too much time on our hands. And as always, with me is the Artful Dodger to my Oliver Twist, Kyle Mulford, and I'm Noah Saturn. How's it going, Kyle?
Please, sir, may I have some more?
Yes, have as much as you want.
More podcasts.
Then I'll throw you in my oven and cook you up, because this is Hansel and Gretel, I guess.
Okay.
I think I got my wires crossed.
Maybe.
Alright, so what are we talking about today, Kyle?
Speaking of Oliver Twist and all that jazz, we're talking about Nicholas Nickleby, another Charles Dickens classic.
Yes. His third novel out of 15.
I didn't realize he had that many.
Yes.
I can name 4 or 5, maybe?
Yeah, there's a few ones that everybody knows, like Oliver Twist, A Tale of Two Cities,
Little Dorrit,
and then Great Expectations.
Oh, yeah. And then we have,
David Copperfield.
Not the magician. He wrote about the magician 100 years before the magician existed.
Pretty solid stuff.
He's just like Nostradamus.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really familiar with Nicholas Nickleby, actually, before watching this. And this is a 2002 version. But before we get into that, we're going to go into our what-you-watchin phase here.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah. Noah?
What you watching?
A few things. We'll start off with, I watched a movie, I think might have been like it felt like an independent film, Little Woods, with Lily James and Tessa Thompson, about just a small town where Tessa Thompson used to like run drugs across the Canadian border just to make extra money and make ends meet. And,
just for fun.
And, and she tried to get out of that life, but there's just no way to make money in this town. And she's helping her sister with her kid and needs more money. And so she gets back into it. It was an interesting little movie.
The Canadian drug cartel is run by Lily James?
Yes, entirely.
Or
she's the sister.
Okay. The Canadian drug cartel is run by Ryan Gosling.
That sounds right.
And then halfway through the movie, they switch to Ryan Reynolds to see if anyone can tell.
It was a good little movie. I also finally watched Crazy Heart. I had never seen that before. 2009 movie with the dude
Jeff Bridges.
Boy, this is gonna be a long night of podcasting when I can't remember anybody's
pretty short
names.
night because he can't remember anyone.
That's true. I'm done, folks. No, Jeff Bridges won his Best Actor Oscar for this role. It seemed very A Star is Born, only more about the drunk mentor. So I don't know if you've seen this one before.
No, but I've seen 3 versions of A Star is Born.
Well, I've seen 2, one for this podcast. And he was really good in this. It was a good movie. I found it fun that the opening place that he's kind of a washed up singer and he's just doing little dive bars and like using the local bands or whatever that they can give him. And the first place he goes is a bowling alley. So is the dude back at the bowling alley. Nice. I thought that was fun. I watched on Disney Plus the movie Noelle with Anna Kendrick.
And Bill Hader.
And Shirley MacLaine. Yeah, Shirley MacLaine.
Nice.
It was cute. And it was Anna Kendrick being Anna Kendrick. And if you like that, you might like this movie. I like Anna Kendrick, so it was fun. So
was it regular Anna Kendrick, not Simple Favor Anna Kendrick?
No, it was not Simple Favor Anna Kendrick. Although that movie is excellent. Yeah, it's a cute movie if you've got Disney Plus. I watched The Last Black Man in San Francisco. That was pretty good. I'm not sure if just like, because I'm a white dude, I'm not sure if I got everything it was trying to say about like gentrification and all this stuff. But I know it was about that and also about kind of not putting a value to the place as to who you are as more to what you do as who you are. because he was really stuck on this house that he grew up in, and that was his whole life, was about getting back into this house. And and it's not about where you came from, it's about what you're doing and where you're going and all this. But it was also about, obviously, the title Last Black Man in San Francisco, the gentrification of the city and how they've gotten pushed to the outskirts. And so it was a very interesting movie. I watched another horror anthology. I can't come up with words tonight.
Oh boy.
This is terrible. Nightmare Cinema. This one was interesting because the in-between story was basically just a theater that people would walk by, and then all of a sudden they'd see their name up on the marquee, and they'd go in, and then they get entranced by the screen, and they'd be in the story on the screen. And it started out with a fun one that was kind of like poking fun at a lot of the horror tropes, with like out in the woods, and then like one of them is a killer, and then it turned into like alien bugs were involved, and
nice.
It was a really fun story, but then the rest of them just got kind of stupid and dull and put me to sleep. So I can't say I recommend it. One of the stories was, I don't know if anybody out there watches General Hospital, but the guy who plays Sonny was in it as a priest. So that was interesting.
Nice.
And then the guy running the projector, I don't know if he's supposed to be the devil or what, but it was Mickey Rourke.
Nice.
So that was interesting, because this was only a couple of years old. So it's old, I don't know what happened to your face, Mickey Rourke. All the boxing and probably drugs.
Yes. Pretty sure it was from his wrestling career in The Wrestler.
Yes. So the first segment was pretty good, and then it just kind of went downhill from there. So
that's a bummer. I like anthology films.
Yeah. I watched A Prayer Before Dawn, another A24 film. This one was interesting because I was reading that it was actually based on a true story about a guy who went to prison in Thailand. And I think it was filmed in Thai prisons with actual prisoners.
Wow.
So they went back, and I don't know if they went to the prison he was in. But my problem with the movie was that I didn't have a lot of sympathy for the character. Like, it's about this guy who gets caught for using drugs in Thailand and gets put in prison. And he still gets drugs brought into, like heroin or whatever, brought into the prison.
Then he goes undercover to help bring down a bunch of bad guys after avenging his brother's death.
No, that'd be cool.
No, that's the Raid 2.
But no, it's based on a true story, and so he gets caught using drugs and goes to prison, and then he's still using drugs in prison, and then finds boxing, and eventually because he's got all sorts of anger management issues too, but then he finds boxing, and then he eventually gets clean, and the end of the movie is a boxing match that he's in, and then after that he ends up getting, then the little text at the end is, after a couple of years, he moved to a UK prison, and then he was out early because of good behavior or something. I don't know. He got clean, and you see him at the end of the movie, the real guy. But the whole movie, I'm going, the guy's a druggy asshole with anger management issues. Like, why? Like, that's great that he got off the drugs in real life, but I don't know why I care about him in this movie.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
I watched Lethal Weapon 2. Because I watched Lethal Weapon last time, so...
Diplomatic immunity.
Diplomatic immunity. Come on, it's Lethal Weapon 2. I like all of them. I know people say they progressively got worse, which they did. But I love all of the Lethal Weapon movies. I watched Nancy Drew and the Hidden Staircase again because my daughter saw a preview and they wanted to watch it, so I rented it for them. I've talked about it in other podcasts. I won't stay on that one. I watched Brightburn, which was a cool kind of it was produced by James Gunn. I don't remember who the director was, but kind of felt like an Elseworlds Superman story, where what if he grew up with some good parents on a farm, but he was this evil alien. So, and then it kind of turns into this horror movie at the end, was real bloody and horror fest with with James Gunn producing.
I remember seeing like someone drew a picture of like Superman like bending over the slapping spanking bending him over and spanking the Brightburn kid. It's pretty great.
I really liked it a lot. It's a great, like I said, it feels like a great Elseworlds Superman story. I watched Palms with my wife about Diane Keaton and a bunch of other old ladies in a retirement center getting together to make a cheerleading club.
What is it with Diane Keaton and like her string of films of like Diane Keaton and Friends? There's like book club, there's Palms, there's like this whole extended universe of these.
She's just the same character throughout.
She just keeps on working.
No, but spoiler, there's going to be no more because she dies of cancer in this one.
Well, that's a bummer.
And that's not much of a spoiler if you're going to go watch this movie. You know at the beginning she has cancer, and you know that's where they're going with it. Yep. So it was a cute movie. It was all right. And then I also watched Nickleby. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, but first I watched one that I can talk about.
Oh, awesome.
I watched The Battle of Algiers from 1966. I believe it's an Italian film, and it was made in black and white, very much in what feels like a documentary, but it is fiction. It's about the real-life struggle between the Algerian, kind of Muslim-based Algerian population working against when they were still occupied by France in the 1950s up until they declared their independence in 1962 or 63, if I remember correctly. Good movie. Feels very relevant, just the way it's filmed. There's like bombings, there's crashes, there's sort of like urban warfare, guerrilla tactics. It almost feels like you could very easily transplant it to like American forces in the Middle East. Yeah. So it definitely feels like it still could be ripped from the headlines very easily. So I definitely highly recommend that. Good movie.
I'll check that one out. That one sounds like it'd be one that would be on Canopy or something, I bet.
Canopy or probably...
Is that one that has a Criterion collection?
I think there is a Criterion version of it.
I think there might be. So, Nickleby, 2002. This opened in 5 theaters on December 27th, 2002, and then it opened wider in January. So I think they were trying to get the Oscar thing going. It ended up making only 3.6 million worldwide though in its run, which I'm sure probably didn't have a huge budget. So, but that's a little disappointing. But it did win, or no, it was nominated for Best Motion Picture for Comedy or Musical at the Golden Globes.
Oh, just like The Martian.
And it lost to Chicago. The others it were up against was About a Boy, Adaptation, and My Big Fat Greek Wedding, which I've recommended on this podcast.
Yeah, that was a solid year.
Yeah, so...
And I think, if I remember correctly, Chicago went all the way to the Oscars.
Yes. Didn't that win Best Picture that year?
It did.
Yes. I'm sure there were probably better movies in Chicago, but I like Chicago.
Yeah.
Let's see. Rotten Tomatoes, this one had a 78% with 126 critics. 75% with 9,931 users. So pretty good ratings on there.
All right, so before we dive into this, let's talk a little bit about Charles Dickens and his basic writing style. He was born in 1812, died 1870. And whether or not you've read any of his stuff, this guy's influence is everywhere. I took a Charles Dickens class in college, so I have a little more knowledge of him, and especially with most of his novels, what he would write them in sort of installment format, similar to like a magazine or a comic book, where once a month, a new chapter or a new section of it would come out, and then you pretty much buy it for a couple bucks or whatever, buy it for cheap, and then you get the family together and you'd all read it around the fire together, almost like you're watching TV or appointment television. So then you talk about it with your friends, and then you'd kind of wait for the next installment to come out. So sometimes, because of that, some of his novels can feel very episodic, and that's kind of by design because they did come out in episodes. And also, what was interesting, his plots are always pretty well constructed beforehand. A lot of stuff going on. Sometimes there's just a lot of characters just because it would come out as installments, different pieces, subplots. Not necessarily everything would get resolved because just like in that format, he would often take a lot of author feedback of like, hey, what'd you think of this part? Or like, hey, what'd you think of this part? Then sometimes he would make changes as he went along. So some things don't quite work in the whole grand scheme of things. That's tend to be part of it, but he was very popular in his day and is probably more popular now. I mean, everybody knows Charles Dickens.
I actually am not as familiar as maybe I should be with him. I know A Christmas Carol. I've seen a lot of versions of that, but I don't think I've read any of his books. And Nicholas Nickleby may be the first movie I've watched outside of any versions of Christmas Carol. So, and yeah, I saw that this one actually was also published as a serial between March of 1838 and September of 1839, called The Life and Adventures of Nicholas Nickleby. And like you said, this one does feel very episodic, which I actually enjoyed that about this movie. It just kind of, let's go to this little adventure and this little adventure, and the title of the actual serial, The Life and Adventures, is a great title because you kind of get a whole big section of his life where it's like, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And
now where it's like you're talking, it's kind of set up like you're talking to a buddy. Hey, like, hey, did I tell you about the time I was like an actor in this company?
Yeah.
Or did I tell you about the time I was a teacher for a while? Then like...
that time I screwed over my uncle because he was out to get me. So starting out this movie, it speaking of the theatrical part of it, it starts out with little sets made out of like cardboard or
kind
something.
of like almost like this like paper cutout puppet type theater where it kind of introduces the cast in a very nice way. It kind of gets you in the mood. This is sort of what we're going for. This is sort of fun story. Hey, we hope you have a good time. It does feel like
little cutout sets from the different portions.
Yeah, it's pretty
of the
cute,
movie.
almost like a dollhouse.
Yeah. And then we go to this fun narrator. It's just like, what happens, when we're born, we're slapped and turned upside down
slapped and cut loose.
Yeah.
And it shows like a baby being like slapped and
and they show it step by step and showing the cord getting cut.
Yeah.
And then we start talking about Nicholas Nickleby, and they're like, oh, but this isn't the one you've heard about.
It zooms in on a couple. This is Nicholas Nickleby. Then it zooms in on the baby. This is our Nicholas Nickleby. It kind of zips through the first 19 years of his life. And so it is a small portion, but he does a lot in that portion. Yeah, it's Charles Dickens for you.
Yeah. but yeah, he's the narrator kind of zips through so they grew up in this small little countryside in Devonshire, I think.
Life was good.
His dad didn't make a lot of money,
but he didn't feel the need to have a lot of money. They were fine. Everything was good. And then he talked to his brother Ralph. And then he's like, hey, maybe you should try speculation, which is sort of investing in stock market, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it kind of like the stock market type of thing?
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
Because that was one thing about the movie. I was like, I'm not sure what you're doing, but it sounds kind of like just basically stock market. Dickens era stock market. But yeah, so the elder Nickleby was, Nicholas Nickleby was a good man and taught his children to be good people and
appreciate the little things in life.
Yeah, and to not be focused on money and wealth and things, but on helping people and being a good person. So, and then when the younger Nicholas Nickleby is about 19 years old, his father passes away and leaves his family with nothing.
Because he tried to invest it all and lost everything.
And lost it. So he tried speculating and he sucked at speculating, apparently. And so the Nicholas Nickleby we're following, along with his sister Kate. And Nicholas Nickleby is played by Charlie Hunnam, which I'm assuming most people will be more familiar with him from, what is that? Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy, yep, that's so.
He was in the new...
Imagine him...
He's also the new King Arthur in that Guy, what's his face?
The Guy Ritchie
King Arthur, which wasn't that great of a movie.
Yeah, nobody saw that.
But
actually, a buddy of mine did and said he liked it, but he's weird.
He's good in this. I like him. I did read somewhere that he actually is British, but when they found him for the role, he had been working on his American accent so much to keep work in America that he had to relearn his British accent.
That's funny.
So they actually hired a British guy, but he had to relearn. He had to take accent lessons to get his British accent back. So him and his sister Kate and their mom, they go to the brother Ralph, played by Christopher Plummer.
Yep, Charles Dickens could always write a pretty good villain. He's very characters that you love to hate.
And there's a couple of them in this movie.
Oh yeah, and his brother is just very cold. He's just like, well, I can't do this. I'm just going to have to get you a job and just...
He's the exact opposite of the elder Nicholas Nickleby, yes. In that he just is all about money. He doesn't care who he hurts. He doesn't care who hurts who, as long as he gets richer.
And even in his house, he's got all this weird stuff. So the first introduction, they're kind of sitting in his foyer. He's got a bird collection of these stuffed birds. He's got these weird, feet and all these kind of stuff in jars. It's just kind of creepy.
Yeah, there was there's something with birds there because there was bird feed everywhere too. Yeah, it was weird.
It's like he just liked the stuff.
Yeah, money coming in and out and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, okay, I'll get you a job, and he sends Nicholas Nickleby off to a boarding school to help as a teacher assistant or something like that. And
like in the Squeers, what are the Dutherby Hall or whatever. Sounds like this nice thing, but then when you actually meet this man...
Wackford Squeers.
Wackford Squeers. That is a Dickensian name if I ever heard one. Right up there with Ebenezer Scrooge.
Exactly. Wackford Squeers. Played by Jim Broadbent in the most glorious, over-the-top, villain.
Yeah,
kind of.
You could tell Jim Broadbent was having fun. He's one of those actors who's whenever he shows up in a movie, he has a good time, and it's always fun to see him have a good time.
And you kind of like you said, he's a villain you love to hate because he's so fun to watch, but he's so evil.
He's just so despicable. He's like taking kids, all right, you'll have to share the same amount of milk, and you got to drink this much. Oh, I got to call out the numbers 1, 2, 3, and then once you're done, you're done.
Yeah, and then the last kid, he just takes the pitcher away from him
and then drinks some himself.
And
and if you didn't know he was a bad guy, he's got a lower class Cockney type accent, and he only has one eye.
and he runs this rundown boarding school, and they go out there, and it's just dark and dank and
dingy, poorly maintained.
And all the kids look like a bunch of beggar orphans. And
yeah, if Oliver Twist, Tiny Tim.
Yep. So
you've seen a Dickensian orphan. You know exactly what we're talking about.
So it turns out he's just exploiting these children and getting the money from the parents. They even get letters sent to the kids, and he's like, "Oh, this one's from your uncle. Your aunt died, and But here's some money to help pay for tuition. But or here's some money for you. But you broke a glass last week, so I'm going to keep that."
Exactly.
So he doesn't care about the kids at all, just about the money coming in. He doesn't feed the kids. One of the parents actually meets him in town and says, "Give these boots to my kid at the school."
He says, "Okay, I will."
He gives them to his kid.
Give him to his own kid.
And to see how he treats his kids versus the others, his kid is just this plump, well-fed kid, and everyone else looks like they haven't eaten in 3 weeks, and they feed him this
Cousin
slop.
Dudley from Harry Potter.
And then his wife is just someone who's just
give him this, basically what they call medicine, but if anything, it just makes them lose their appetite, so they don't have to feed him as much.
Yeah, and she's just awful too, and they're just proud of it, because later they find that Nicholas Nickleby he's a very proud man,
well-educated,
and so the Squeer's wife is we need to knock his pride down a peg or two, and Wackford is no one brings down a man's pride like you, and she's like, "Oh, that's so sweet of you."
Yeah, they're sort of deliciously evil would be the best way to put it.
Beating on the kids. And
then they've got this one kind of older kid who's been there for a long time. His name is Smike, and he's basically stuck there as a servant, and he is Tiny Tim all the way through. He's got sort of a lame walk. He's kind of hunches over. He's always sick, and they make him do all this tough manual labor, go get me this, Smike, go get me that, blah, blah, blah.
And they're all well, you were paid for the first couple months. Now he works. So when Nickleby tries to teach him, they're no, he doesn't pay for school, so he doesn't get school. He works. And I liked when he was teaching the kids. He's washing the winder. Winder, W-I-N-D-E-W. No, he says D-E-R, der, winder. Need to wash the winder. And then he has someone go over and wash it.
Yeah.
It's what was another one was botany, B-O-T-T-I-N-N-E-Y, botany.
Yes.
So he's not even teaching these kids anything. There's just child labor there.
Exactly. Really, he's just, definitely just making money off of them for no reason.
And Nickleby, which the daughter and the mom, Squeers, both call him Knuckle Boy.
Yes, Mr. Knuckle Boy.
What's that, Knuckle Boy? And the daughter falls in love with him because he's so handsome.
He's good looking and well educated.
Yeah, and he denies her advances, and Eva's like, oh, if I never see this awful place again, I'll never think of you, blah, blah, blah. He was actually very mean to her.
Yeah, he just kind of lays it all out. Listen, I don't like you. I've never liked you. And if I leave this place, I'd be happy to never see it again, or something like that.
Yeah, so then she hates him too, and he kind of takes a liking to Smike because...
Smike is just treated like absolute dirt for no real reason. He's just a poor kid.
Yeah, so they kind of bond together, and since he's not getting an education there, he's like encouraging him to just get out of here. And so he does, and that's when Squeers and his wife go and run off and bring him back, and then
we get this nice tense scene, and where Nickleby and all of the students were just kind of like pacing back and forth. Are they back at it? Are they back at it? Did he get away? Did they find him? And he says, oh, if they find him, please let him already be dead, because it's so awful there. Mm-hmm. And when they come back, they do find him. They bring him back. They're gonna beat him with a switch, and Nickleby goes off on Squeers. Like, this is it. That's it. You treated him so horribly. He doesn't deserve this, but you do. And then Nickleby grabs the switch and just starts beating Squeers. And he said, I don't know what strange thing has possessed me to stop, but he did. He's like, come on, Smike, we're getting out of here.
And the daughter has a friend or something like that who's engaged to...
Another local guy.
John Bowdy or something like that, played by McKidd. Is it Kevin McKidd? He's on... I think he was on ER for a while. Oh, no, okay. Grey's Anatomy or ER or one of those.
A hospital show.
But I loved him in this movie. He had a small part, but like there's a great scene where...
Yeah, because so as they're finally leaving, it's dark. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go. So then someone comes up and he says, Nickleby! It's like, oh no, they're after me again.
Are you the one that beat down the schoolmaster?
It's like, yes. It's like, that's the greatest thing I've heard in 20 years.
I can't let you go without shaking your hand.
I just wish I could have been there myself.
So he's our good guy out of that place. I'm not sure.
Gives him some money, like, listen, take this. You're going to need it. Go in this direction.
And that's kind of the end of our first serial.
And that kind of ends that episode.
And then we get a fun kind of episode where he's off with Smike and they're going to go join a ship, and be dock hands or whatever.
And then how it works is it kind of alternates between sort of Nicholas plot and then his sister Kate plot.
Yeah.
Nicholas, Kate. So we go to Kate, and Kate is still in London, kind of working at a dress shop, and then she gets a call from her uncle. It's like, hey, I'm having a dinner party with all my business friends. Can you...
Oh, that's right. That's where this was.
Can you be there? Can you, be a hostess for me? It's like...
And it's basically a bunch of investors that, they're just...
Bunch of rich...
It's almost like they're just trading money back and forth.
At that point, yeah. You're so rich, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And, so he goes them, he feeds them, and then, of course, there's one creepy guy who starts taking a liking to Kate. He goes... Oh, she seems kind of disturbed. I bet it's because she wants to have sex with me. And then another guy's like, oh yeah, I'll make you a bet. I'll make you a bet that she can't look me in the eye and say that she does not want to have sex with me.
Yeah, it just kind of puts her on the spot and harassing her. And it's kind of like this Hawks guy is kind of despicable to watch too. It's kind of hard to watch that much he harasses her, just like Squeers with the children. It's like he physically beats them, and this guy just mentally harasses Kate through the whole movie. So, and Ralph just kind of turns away because it's like, these are my investors. I'm not going to stop them from doing this to you.
Also,
whatever.
He makes a point of... There's a line of dialogue. It's like, well, you're so generous. You've given us all this wine, but I noticed, Ralph, that you haven't taken a sip. Well, I just want to make sure you guys are having fun.
Yeah.
Definitely not because I'm going to try and cheat you out of your money when you're drunk.
And he really doesn't care anyway, because one great scene where, to really show what kind of villain he is when the family comes to him at the beginning, the elder Nicholas Nickleby's, the mom, is crying, and he's like, oh, you don't need to be crying, blah, 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 blah. And it's just
you don't need to be crying. Fathers die every day.
Yeah. Fathers die, or no, she's like, but this was a special kind of tragedy. And he goes, yeah, husbands die every day. And then fathers die and blah, blah, blah. And then the younger Nicholas Nickleby goes, and brothers die, just trying to get his sympathy because it was his brother who died, he goes, yeah, and puppies die too. Just happens every day.
What's your point?
It's just,
he just absolutely despicable kind of guy.
Does not care about anybody. But yeah, so she's off getting harassed by this Hawks dude.
And then we cut back to our good traveling buddies, Nicholas and Smike. They have a nice scene. They're like, what much do you remember about your life kind of before you were there? It's like, I don't remember much. I was stuck in this kind of room above the attic. And then I just remember being really scared all the time when someone would try and come. Either to try and hurt me, try and give me food. He just wasn't sure. So he's always scared of when someone was trying to open this trap door.
And I'll say Smike was played by Jamie Bell.
Yes.
And he is wonderful in this role. I had a lot of sympathy for the character, and I really dug him and Nickleby's chemistry together as two people who really grew fond of each other. And, even in that scene, Smike is like, I have no one to go to. I don't have a family. He goes, you're my family. And then Nickleby has some sort of line, the word that separates us from this point on will not ever be said by me. So I thought that was how they said it in there was a really great line.
Yeah, I'm sure that's straight from the book.
Yeah, I bet. So this was a really nice scene that they had there. And then they're off the next day and they're going to go work on a ship and try and make some money. And they run across...
See these two kids.
Victor Crummels.
Victor Crummels, another great Charles Dickens name. Played by Nathan Lane, and this is Nathan Lane being an actor with a capital A.
he is an actor.
He runs a theater troupe, and he sees him like, oh, we're going to go. Oh, I was like, well, how about you gentlemen? So why don't you go? We're actually kind of, have dinner with us. And they set up, boys, set up the dinner room. And they have like this nice table with this food, and then like a theater matte painting.
Yeah, because they're just riding around in a caravan.
Yeah.
Just a backdrop behind them. And they actually put a couch out there and a table. And he's very, very actory. And he's like, why would you want to work on a ship? You've got the natural look for an actor, and you should be coming with me. And Smike there would be a perfect apothecary for Romeo and Juliet. And
it's like,
can you make money at this?
Can you make money at this? You can art and money. Yes, and Nathan Lane is having a good time, and because he's having a good time, you have a good time.
Exactly.
Everyone loves Nathan Lane, and for good reason.
I was worried at first because there's been so many villains. I was like, oh, please don't let Nathan Lane be a villain. There's only one thing that he does that's kind of questionable. with a family member, but he convinces them to join the theater then, and then we also run into one of the actors played by Alan Cumming, which was a great,
just a bit part. He's just be like, it's really fun to see like a really good actor pretend to be a bad actor because they probably know it from some amount of experience.
Yeah, because he's up on stage and you hear Nathan Lane directing. It was like, no, you're supposed to be fierce. But you also want this and blah blah blah, and it's just like all these
roar, no, like this with rage, and then
your
trap door. Don't forget to close your trap door.
He just like begrudgingly walks over, and then you have the girl come out. And it's obviously this older lady, but she's dressed very like young with the two braids down the side of her head. And this is Nathan Lane calls her the infant wonder.
How old is she? 10. She looks old and she's 10. She's been 10 for the last 8 years.
Alan Cumming is like, he feeds her a diet of gin and water to keep her growth back. She's been 10 for 8 years. So that was the only questionable thing about Nathan Lane is he's keeping his daughter 10 years old for until she's 18 or 19 here.
And then of course we talk about what do you think? This play isn't working. We got to do something else. Let me consult with Mrs. Crummels. And it's someone in drag.
And that was one thing that I was reading too. This is apparently a character that this actor, I don't remember who the actor is, but this was a character he's created, a female character, and as they were reading the part in the book for the characteristics of this woman, they're like, the director was like, every characteristic that she has, he has in this, cross-dressing.
This character,
but he's
this
like,
persona.
He's like, I don't know if I want to go to the studio and ask for a man to play this role, but then the producers loved it, and they're like, no, that's perfect, put him in, or
Yeah, it's pretty funny, and
have him play the woman. But and that being theater though, it actually fits for that scene because back in the Shakespeare days, men played all the roles. So
exactly.
I thought it was fitting for that scene to have that happen. When they go out and talk, though, Alan Cumming is this guy who's like, he wants to do bigger things on the stage with them. And he goes, they won't ever let me do my specialty, the Highland fling.
And he starts to do it, and he starts to do this cool dance, but then like Nathan Lane comes out like some sort of Monty Python sketch. Nope. Instead, we're gonna do Romeo and Juliet.
There's about 2 or 3 times that he comes out to do this Highland fling, and as soon as he gets in position, someone comes in and like stops him. And so it's just a little recurring thing that was kind of fun. So this whole segment was like, you had this dark, dank, brooding, like boarding school segment, and then you go into this fun, upbeat,
kind of goofy,
whimsical, like theater troupe thing. And they perform Romeo and Juliet, and then Nicholas gets a letter saying that his sister is in trouble.
And then, of course, we also see what his sister has been doing. She goes to the theater with her uncle and her mom in their really nice theater box, but oh no.
At first, I thought they were going to go see Romeo and Juliet that Nickleby was in, but
Nope.
No, it was a different
show or something. And then, of course, there's that creepy guy who decides to switch spots in the box with Ralph. And then he's kind of like hitting on her the whole time, and she's not into it.
And of course, it was set up by Ralph
because she wants to marry her off.
Yeah,
with his other rich friend.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, if I can get, if I can give my niece to this rich guy, he'll give me his money. So it's like, of course, I'll let him, sexually harass her if I can get a good investment out of it. So yeah, she gets harassed at the theater, and then by the time Nickleby gets into town, he overhears Hawks in a bar talking about the incident and making fun of Kate and all this stuff, and he comes to defend her honor and all that old school talk of, I need to defend my sister's name. It's being destroyed here. If anyone is a good moral person here, they will tell me the name and address of this man right here so I can get my revenge or whatever. I'm like going, he's right there, dude. Just beat him up. Yeah. You don't need his name.
Just go in and just go like total Chuck Norris on him.
But so he kind of threatens him in there. He's like, you stay away from my sister or else I will pummel you the next time. And then where does it go from there? Because Ralph has this assistant, Newman Noggs.
Yes.
Another name, Newman Noggs. Newman.
Hello,
and this is,
Jerry.
And this is one of those things where it's like, I don't know if they really explained his character much, because he just basically said, I used to be a gentleman at this one place. Everybody respected me, and now nobody does, and it's all Ralph's fault. But like, we never get any detail about
I think it's assumed, at least when I read from when I was looking it up on Wikipedia and stuff, is he became an alcoholic, and then he lost all of his money to speculation, so now he's stuck there being his secretary / assistant.
Yeah, and he hates doing it, but he does everything for Ralph, and he also eavesdrops on him to to help people out on the side. So, but is the family staying at his house somewhere then?
They're staying somewhere else away from Ralph.
And then is this the point where Nickleby gets a job with Tweedledee and Tweedledum?
I think so.
He goes into this place to get another job, and we do have to mention that he runs into a girl played by Anne Hathaway a couple times throughout the movie.
There's a surprise Anne Hathaway in this film.
So he's run into her a couple of times up to this point, but then he gets a job as kind of a cleric at some other manor.
A clerk, not a cleric.
Not a cleric. Sorry.
He's the healer of the dungeon party. He's been playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
I have. I'm sorry. Literally tons. But No, he's a clerk at their manor or something. I don't even know what he does for them. But the way they walk in, there's two doorways, and they walk and they face each other, and then the two doorways, they're behind them and looking at each other from there, and they just look like Tweedledee and Tweedledum when they come out. But it's Timothy Spall and Gerard Horan.
These guys are fun.
Playing Charles and Ned Cheeryble.
I think that sounds right.
And yeah, they are kind of fun because I think they're playing twins, and so they kind of they look very similar, and they're playing off of each other really well. And they're like, how much did you make at your last job? And he's like, oh, such and such. He's like, oh, and then they go off to the side. Oh, that's not enough. We need to give him more than that. And blah, blah, blah. And they're like, we'll give him like £1 a week or something like that. They go over and how about £1 a week? And he's just dumbfounded, and they're like, is that not enough?
So he finally gets a good job and can start making something of himself.
And this is when the plot starts to like
thicken,
come together too. Like all of the characters, you find out what's going on. There's this guy that has something on Ralph from years ago and then had a falling out with him because he used to be an investor too. And it sounds like Ralph screwed him over somehow.
And you kind of get the impression that Ralph has screwed over a lot of people.
Yeah. And left a lot of people on the street. But this guy has some sort of secret over Ralph, and you don't know exactly what that is, but now the family is together, and
with the addition of Smike, of course.
With the addition of Smike, because now he's family too. And then we go into the storyline of Anne Hathaway, because her father owes money to Ralph, of course, because everybody owes Ralph money.
Yeah.
And her mother is dead, and her father is sick because he was a drinker too, and so she's trying to get jobs to help pay for that, and so the Tweedledee and Tweedledum come up with a plot to buy her paintings and make it look like there's an anonymous like benefactor, just so that she can work from home and make it not look like she's abandoning her dad or anything, and not have to like go out and look for work.
And so this benefactor, they decide like, hey, Nickleby, you're going to be this anonymous benefactor. And so you're going to have to spend a lot of time with Anne Hathaway.
Oh, shucks. Because Anne Hathaway is also, like, everyone ends up tied together somehow.
Yep,
because
that's tight plotting that Dickens likes to do.
Yeah, and because Anne Hathaway ends up being the daughter of someone that Timothy Spall was in love with years ago, who went off with someone else and had a kid. So he's, of course, going to help her because he was in love with the mother. And so, yeah, he sends Nicholas Nickleby to go and buy the paintings from her, and then they kind of start falling for each other, but she can't leave her dad because she feels like she owes him something, even though he's been a terrible father and won't let her do anything, and she's taking on his debt, and it's awful. But Ralph gets wind of this whole conversation and finds out that Nickleby loves this girl, so he's like, oh, someone else that Nickleby likes. We'll screw him over in this too. And I may have skipped. Did we skip? Was the whole Smike thing before this?
It was right around this same period in one of the very close episodes.
So like Ralph decides, oh, we'll get Hawks involved again and go, hey, you know what? I can get you Anne Hathaway as a wife by saying that I'll clear her dad's debts. Would you like her for a wife? And he's like, well, yeah, she's the prettiest girl in all of London.
She's very pretty.
She's a very pretty girl, and I'm like 3 times older than her, but that's okay. You
sound like the bug man from Men in Black. Sugar.
Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yes. I forgot it was Vincent D'Onofrio.
So, yeah, he's just pawning women off to this Hawks guy left and right. So, yeah, so then we get Nickleby catches wind of this plot to sell her off to Hawks. But this was also after another thing. Ralph found out that Nickleby has this friend named Smike. And
he's like, oh no.
He has a friend. I can't let that happen.
Not specifically, because we find out the big reveal is that Smike is actually Ralph Nickleby's son.
But he doesn't know that when he decides to get back at Nickleby, though. He doesn't know that till the end.
Yeah.
So he's just like, oh, he's got a friend? Well, I'll hit him in the feels instead of like, beating him up. Like, I don't want to kill him. I'm going to hit him where it hurts the most because he's a very empathetic person. And
empathy is for losers.
Yeah. And so he's like, hey, Squeers, you want to get back at Nickleby at Knuckleboy?
Yes.
At Nickleby for taking Smike from you? Why don't you steal him back?
It's like, oh, hell yeah.
So he's pawning off women, kidnapping crippled kids.
You think we're working for the bad guy?
So then we get this whole scene where Smike gets kidnapped by Squeers, and before they leave town, they go to the bar, and there's this whole tense Mission Impossible scene with Nickleby finding out where he's being held, and Kevin McKidd comes in and goes, and it's like, oh, hey, it's the guy who beat up Squeers. How you doing? And he's like, Smike got kidnapped. You remember that cripple boy I was with? Oh, yeah. I think he's over in this place. So they come up with this scheme to distract Squeers, and Newman Noggs is with him. He's like, that is the worst plan I've ever heard. Other than that, it's a great plan.
That's crazy. So crazy that it just might work.
So then, he has to sneak into the building, and then he's like climbing out one window of one room and going across these rickety boards that are breaking on him to get to the next room. And then there's even a point where he's in the room trying to get Smike, and Squeer's son comes in because they see that the window was left open, and very, very Mission Impossible.
Kind of fun action scene.
Yeah, it was very tensely. It was really well directed because it was a very tense scene. So he gets Smike back, and then the whole Smike is really sick and has to get out of the city. So they go and have a touching scene at the house in Devonshire that's actually still there because nobody wanted to buy it, and that's where Smike ends up passing away. And then Nickleby finds out about this plot with marrying off Anne Hathaway, and he goes back to save the day. And
then Ralph finds out that, Smike was my son. It's all my fault. He dies.
He hangs himself in the belfry where he was keeping Smike as a kid, because he had like a secret marriage with someone that he apparently got money from the father of this woman, and if the father found out that he married the daughter, then he would have taken the inheritance back or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
And so it was weird because there was also this plot with you lost 10,000 pounds today, and I don't know why.
I'm sure it's more explained in the book.
Yeah, that was one of the things that they kept saying, and it was a very important plot point. Like everybody's like, haha, because of this thing, he's going to lose 10,000 pounds. And Nickleby's like, I know something. You're going to lose 10,000 pounds today. He's like, you could not know that. I was just like, could someone tell me why he's losing the 10,000 pounds? I don't get it. But he lost the 10,000 pounds, and he found out his son died as the best friend of his enemy. So he's like, I've got nothing to live for.
Yep.
And then the rest of them live all happily ever
after.
And Nathan Lane comes back.
Yes. Because you don't waste Nathan Lane. Because
he ends up the narrator at the end.
Yes.
And they all got married and had a great gay old time. It was fun. Yeah, this movie was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, if you like Charles Dickens, it's definitely, it's one of his earlier works, which tends to be a little more positive overall.
Even with the villains, it was very over the top. I don't know how that translates from the book. If the book is a little more dour because there's so much villainy in it, and maybe the director just kind of pulled out the fun even with the villains. So I'm not sure, but whatever he did, I really like what the director did with this movie.
Yeah, overall, I liked it. I haven't read the book, so that's one thing. So as a movie, I think it stands on its own pretty well. Very well acted, and of course, costumes look great, cinematography is great, definitely well put together. You can tell there's some money behind this. They were definitely going for that sort of British prestige picture that you'd see something like you'd watch as like a BBC miniseries.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure, and they do BBC miniseries of Charles Dickens stuff all the time.
Yeah. I think there's probably like 100 versions of Nicholas Nickleby, so...
There's surprisingly few. It's not one of his more popular works, but you know.
Yeah, for not having any idea what this story was about, I actually really enjoyed this movie, and this would be a high recommend for me. So I liked all of the characters. I liked the serialized, beat by beat with like these different sections of the movie. Like you got the boarding school, you got the theater troupe, you got this going on and this going on, and then this intertwined kind of him and Smike having this bond together. And actually, when Smike died
by 3 ghosts.
When Smike died, I was kind of sad at that part. It was kind of a touching little scene, and you kind of grew to like that bond, and you're like, oh no, I don't want him to die.
Yeah, I believe it's in some of his other books. He was also willing to kill off the cute kid. It's like oh, such and such died. Oh man,
Tiny Tim, let's have him bitten by a rabid dog.
Damn, let's have him stung by bees.
So we migrilled him.
No,
no.
But yeah, I like Charles Dickens. I mean, he's intensely readable, but he's also got some fun sentences in here, bits and pieces. I mean, he's the guy who wrote "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times."
Well, yeah,
and that whole thing. So Dickens is probably, for better or worse, he's probably going to stick around.
Like I said before, I'm only really familiar with A Christmas Carol, which I love. Like I love all the versions. My favorite's Mickey's Christmas Carol, but
well, the best version is the Muppet Christmas Carol.
My wife would agree with you on that one,
because Charles Dickens is played by Gonzo. I was hoping he would reprise his role in this film.
That'd be awesome.
I mean, what about all the other? Where's Muppet Great Expectations, where Miss Havisham is played by Miss Piggy?
Now I want to see all the Dickens classics. I want to see Nicholas Nickleby with Kermit the Frog playing Nicholas Nickleby.
Where's Muppet Oliver Twist?
You get what's the little his nephew's
Robin
as the Oliver has Twist.
Robin is
Smike. Yeah, he can also play Smike. No, so not being familiar, this actually kind of made me maybe want to check out some of his books, and I like the way this one was written, and I liked the really good characters in this. Like, the characters are well drawn out.
Yep, that's another big Dickens thing, because you remember these characters. You remember characters like Oliver Twist. People remember Ebenezer Scrooge.
And Bob Cratchit and Tiny Tim, and you got Nicholas Nickleby here, and Ralph Nickleby, and then Squeers,
David Copperfield. People remember these characters. And also, another thing I like about Charles Dickens, he knows how to kill a bad guy in a very satisfying way. Especially, I believe it's either Little Dorrit or Our Mutual Friend. One of his books where like the bad guy gets hit by a train.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
out with a bang.
He's definitely plot is very good, and then his actual writing is pretty easy to go along with too, and with definitely some fun flourishes, but overall very readable, very understandable, because he wrote his books kind of for a general audience at the time. Yeah.
So anyway, recommend for me, and you can find this one on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, and so what's a good time to move on to our last segment, double features. What would you double feature this with?
This one was really hard because it's and I guess I could have tried to come up with some sort of, episodic type of movie also, but I kind of went with the main character himself, Nicholas Nickleby. You're following him through this whole thing, and he's this really altruistic guy. And I was like, the only thing I could really think of is
Casino.
Not necessarily, but I was thinking anything done by Capra, because the main character is always this really altruistic person who is out to help everyone, help the little man, and is very just a very true person.
Especially when they meet an angel named Clarence.
Yes. But so I'm going to recommend one that I actually watched for the first time here the last week or two, because I got a Capra collection for Christmas, and I had never seen American Madness before. And it's about, and you'll see where he got the idea for the end of It's a Wonderful Life, because this is about a banker, and he's this banker who likes to do things around the Depression era, so like things are getting a little iffy with money, but he's like, no, I need to help people, and I read people and I go, I know who I could trust and blah blah blah, and I'm going to give this loan even though on paper it doesn't look like I should, but I know that they're a good person. I'm going to give this loan to this person. And then the board members are all, we're going to sell your bank to like this bigger bank, and you're going to have to sell off your shares.
Was Jimmy Stewart in this one too?
No, he's not. But
what?
But the thing is
who plays the lead then?
Now I can't think of his name.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's a good movie though, but so he does get his bank robbed, and then everyone goes, it's one of those word of mouth things where it's like, oh, did you hear like $200,000 was stolen from this bank? And then the next person's like, oh, did you hear $500,000 was stolen from that bank? Oh, we can't trust that bank. We got to take all our money out of that bank. And like the entire city, like just everyone is running into the bank going, take my money out, take my money out. Very similar to It's a Wonderful Life with the run on the bank or whatever. And then he's flustered, and he does pull out a gun like, boy, my life is over. I'm just going to kill myself.
And he just wants to open a Boy Scout camp.
Yes. But
in the Senate.
But one of his co-workers, who's also a friend there, he starts calling up all these people that he's given loans to. And it's like, hey, you remember when he helped you out in a bind? We need money here because everyone's coming in to, like take all their money out of the bank. We need people to come in and put money in, even though it's bad times right now. So like he's getting a bunch of people to come in, and they're all going. And so then people that he's helped out in the past, they're running in with their money.
Oh, yeah.
You should bank here because this bank is great. I'll put all of my life savings in this bank.
You see?
and so then people like kind of simmer down, and so it's a Wonderful Life, but well before that was made.
Cool.
But yeah, it's just basically because the main character is very altruistic and kind and just a very genuine person, and that's what I got out of the Nickleby character in this movie. So I feel like he'd be the same kind of person, If he had Ralph's money, he wouldn't be like hurting other people to get more. He'd be helping other people with it. So.
And for me, I think for my double feature, I was just going to recommend Dickens with more Charles Dickens. I'm going to recommend the 1940s adaptation of Great Expectations, directed by David Lean, who also directed an Oliver Twist. He also directed a little movie called Lawrence of Arabia and a bunch of other things. So definitely I'd recommend that because it's supposed to be one of the best Dickens adaptations that have been made. Good movie. What's also kind of fun is that it changes the ending from the book Great Expectations. So much so that people actually thought the ending of the movie was the ending of the book until you go back and read it. It's like, wait a minute. Yep.
I don't know Great Expectations. I never saw that. What is it, Ethan Hawke and Gwyneth Paltrow one either?
There is that one. No, this one was.
I mean, that's more set in modern times. I think.
Yeah, this one is in 1800s London, England.
Oh, and that was one thing that I also saw about Nicholas Nickleby was that the book is set in the 1830s, but the set designer wanted him to up it to the 1850s so that they could get a little bit of the Industrial Revolution into there. So that was just a choice made by...
It makes sense because that's kind of what you think of when you think Charles Dickens, especially in some of his later books. He would talk about all the gross smoke and terrible things coming from London, how the river was so polluted, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, and that must not have been in this book because
this was only his third book.
Yeah, and this one was set in the 1830s. So, well, I mean,
it's probably when it was written.
It makes sense because it was published in 1838 and 1839. So,
yep, it's all right. I guess it's time for our spin to see where we go next. Will we end up with more Charles Dickens, or will we end up with Manos, the Hands of Fate? I don't know.
You never know with this. Just don't be cowards, bend the knee. No more Guy Madden films.
I found it interesting, but I definitely think it would have, if I could have seen it, and it's kind of like as more of a museum piece, since that's what it was designed for.
Yeah, it might have been interesting that way. But anyway, we got 70%, all genres. Spin it to win it. Let's see here. We have a unique, intimate, and honest portrayal of a girl grieving for the loss of her best friend. That just happens to take place on the day the world ends as we know it.
Bridge to Terabithia?
No, this is a movie called Starfish.
Is it about a starfish?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll go with that.
How many reviews did it get?
You know I don't know that.
Well, check.
All right. This is where we're going to cut out. Star trekking across the universe.
He's a star man.
59 critics.
Okay.
90%.
Guess we'll try it then.
The critics' consensus on Rotten Tomatoes is, led by a strong central performance from Virginia Gardner, Starfish is an intelligent, emotionally affecting, and uniquely expansive sci-fi/horror hybrid.
Color me intrigued.
So...
And where can we find it?
Let me get back to... You can find this on Prime Video or Hulu.
Ooh-hoo-hoo.
This is a 2018 drama horror. So, anyway, Starfish on Prime or Hulu.
All right. Until next time, I will be staring. I will be in the winter cold with my fingerless gloves still on my face, with my hands up against the glass, staring at the inside of a bakery.
Being beaten by squeers.
Something like that.